In order to factor anything that has a number in front of the squared term, you have to go ahead and first of all multiply the first and the last number. So 2 times 21 equals 42. I want the factors of 42 that when I subtract them, that number, that sign right there will always tell you if you're adding or subtracting. So I want the factors of 42 that when I subtract them equal this middle number 11. So 1 times 42, when I subtract those I get 41, that's not it. 2 times 21, that won't work. 3 times 14, there you go. When you take 14, take away 3, you get 11. So then you bring down your first term and the sign after it. You use the biggest number first, and you put your variable with it. Now you have a negative 14y, but you want a negative 11y, so you have to add 3y, because those two middle numbers have to add up to the one above it. And then bring down the negative 21. You group the first two only, and you look and see what you can take or what you have in common. I can divide those numbers by 2, and I have a y in each one. So then you make parentheses for the leftovers. So 2 and 2 y's, but I've got a 2 and 1 y that I took out, so that's a y left, minus 14 divided by 2 is 7. Bring down the sign after your parentheses, and just look at what you have left and see what you can divide those numbers by. 3 and 21, I can divide those by 3. So then you put your answer together. Whatever's outside the parentheses goes together, and then what they had in common, and you're done. So that one is 2y plus 3 times y minus 7. So again, on the next one, you take the first and the last number. Don't worry about the signs. You just take the first and the last number and multiply them. So 3 times 4 equals 12. I want the factors of 12 that when I subtract them equal 4. So 1 times 12 won't do it. 2 times 6, that will do it, because 6 take away 2 is 4. So then you bring down your first term and the sign after it. Oops, forgot the squared. And then the biggest one first, 6z. So you have 6z, but you want 4z, so you have to take 2z away. Bring down the negative 4. Group the first two. You can divide those numbers by 3, and they have a z in common. So you have a 3 and 2 z's, but you took a 3 and 1 z out, so that's the z left over, plus sign. 6 divided by 3 is 2. Bring down the sign after the parentheses, and you can divide these numbers by 2. So your final answer is 3z minus 2 times z plus 2. Okay, the next one, 7 times 4, first times last, is 28. So we want the factors of 28 that when you subtract them equal 12. So 1 times 28 does not do it. 2 times 14, okay, you get 12 when you subtract those. Bring down the first term and the sign after it. Use the biggest one with your variable. Okay, I have 14x, but I want 12x, so I have to take 2x away. Bring down the last term. Group the first two together. I can divide those numbers by 7, and they each have an x. So 7 and 2 x's, you took a 7 and 1 x out, so that's an x left over, plus sign. 14 divided by 7 is 2. Bring down the sign after your parentheses. Look at the numbers that are left over. A 2 and a 4, I can divide those by 2. So then whatever is outside goes in parentheses. And whatever they have in common, or whatever's already in the parentheses, gets written down as well. So the next one, 5 times 3 equals 15. You want the first times the last number. Okay, this time, look at here. We're adding this time because that's a plus sign. You always look at the last sign to tell you what you're going to do. So I want the factors of 15 that when I add them equal 8. 1 times 15, 3 times 5, there it is. Okay, so bring down the first term and the sign after it. Biggest number first. I have 5y, but I want 8y, so I have to add the 3y to that. Because remember, these two middle ones have to add up to the one in the middle. And then bring down your positive 3. Okay, I can divide those numbers by 5, and I have a y in common. So I have 5 and 2 y's. I took a 5 and a y out, so that's a y left over, plus 5 divided by 5 is 1. Bring down the sign after your parentheses, and look at what the numbers left over. I have 3's, so I can divide, obviously, both of them by 3. You always want to put the biggest number that you can divide by. So then, whatever's outside of the parentheses goes together, and then whatever you had in your parentheses gets written down. And that one's done. Okay, the next one, the first times the last. 3 times 21 is 63. I want the factors of 63 that when I subtract them equal 2. So 1 times 63, no. 2 doesn't go into it. 3 times 21, no. 4, 5, 6 doesn't go into. 7 times 9, when I subtract those, I get 2. So that's it. So bring down your first term and the sign after it. The biggest number comes first. Okay, I have a negative 9z, but I want a negative 2z, so I have to add the 7z. And then bring down the negative 21. Put parentheses around the first two. These have a 9 and a 3 and a z in common. I'm sorry, I forgot the squared here. So I have a 3 and 2 z's. I took a 3 and 1 z out, so that's a z left over. Minus 9 divided by 3 is 3. Plus 7 and 21, I can divide those by 7. So my final answer is 3z plus 7 times z minus 3. Okay, the next one. First times last. 5 times 15 equals 75. I want the factors of 75 that when I add them equal 28. Okay, 1 times 75, 3 times 25. There it is. Bring down the first term and the sign after it. Biggest number first. Put your x with it. I have 25x, but I want 28x, so I have to add 3x to that. Bring down the last term. Okay, group the first two. I can divide those numbers by 5, and I have an x. So I have a 5 and 2 x's. I took a 5 and 1 x out, so that's an x left over, plus 25 divided by 5 is 5. Bring down the sign after your parentheses. 3 and 15, I can divide those by 3. So the final answer is what's outside the parentheses times the parentheses that you already had.